Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Yasin and today we are going to talk about Riff 2, Riff Writing 2, or I Tried Archetype Rabea for everything, and here's what happened. There are different names for that demo and I got a couple of comments regarding people want videos about my mixing, what did I do in the demo, and so on. It's gonna be a new thing for me because of two things. I never did a mix rundown. It was just on live stream, and depending on questions, I was explaining what did I do with certain plugin. But now I will do my best to make it structure. And the second thing, I'm actually not an audio engineer or anything basically. I'm a solo artist and I did a lot of stuff to learn how to mix a song. Doesn't mean that I'm mixing well, but you will be the judge of that. If it's pleasing to your ears, I think I'm doing a good job. And I will talk about my mix on this demo with a certain order. I'm gonna start like top-down mixing basically. I'm gonna talk about the master bus, then mix bus. I will talk about the instrument bus, and I will talk a little bit about parallel processing bus, actually parallel compression bus. That's all. There is no other processing than that. And I will start by checking the drums, then the bass guitar, then the rhythm, extra guitars, leads, and FX. That will be the order, hopefully, if I don't forget it. That can happen. And I will do my best to make it as close as Connor Kaminski's last A Call Beyond Mix Rundown. Of course, he knows a lot of stuff and he explains it very, very well. I think I know what I'm doing, and we'll see. So let's start by checking the master bus, and if you have any questions, please put it in the comment section. I will do my best to answer. And if you actually don't know the demo, I already talk about it, just give you the name. I don't want to steal the watch count from that video, so it would be really nice if you just stop right now. I'm gonna count to 3, and in the meantime just pause, go, watch, and come back. 1, 2, and 3, and let's start. Now, with the master bus, we have 4 plugins, but you'll see that 2 of them are actually ozone. Let me talk about that first because they have different purposes. If you see, there's only one imager on this one, and I'm using this of course for the imaging purposes, but also I also put the reference tracks here. So I checked drum mix against Periphery's Atrofos. I have the stamps, I bought them. And Spirit Box Rule of Nines, just for the overall thing. I really like the song, I really like the mix. And when I want to level the instruments, if I have questions about my drum mix and I want to reference, I normally go to Invent Animate stuff. For overall stuff, I go to Spirit Box, and if there are too many layers, I go for Periphery. That is normally my referencing ideas. And even though there's a reference option in Ozone, it doesn't mean that it's the best one. I think there could be some other plugins that doing a better job because it just splits them into sections. That's all. But I'm kind of happy. So far I never had an issue, and I'm not using the imager on the bottom one because mastering is a huge topic and I can never ever claim that I know everything, and it also means that I'm doing a lot of auto mastering and I am adding certain stuff like this vintage tape and exciter to the ozone after doing the auto mastering, I just do my best to make it as evaluated and judged as possible. I just don't trust just because it does something that is considered good as a feature. And if I close this imager, which is basically following most of the principles that you will see, I listen the song. I actually let ozone listen the song. And after that, for low frequencies, since they're always centered like kick bass and the bass guitar, I decrease the stereo width for the lower frequency. It helps to have a more clean mix, in my opinion, and that's what I see. And for the rest, I increased, especially the last bandwidth is increasing the air and also helping cymbals breathe a little. It just boosts in a way that it's not masking other instruments and also providing a more cleaner, basically, drum mix. I'm closing this one, and I definitely started with auto mastering, but I'm making sure that on the equalizer, which these are the stuff I added, but it was something like starting with a little bit of cut and not doing anything here and increasing right after. This number 7 and number 2, I guess, if you can actually pick up these numbers. And after that, what I did is basically soloed these areas and listened. Actually, maybe it's a good time to do before after kind of stuff. I will get the main riff, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the maximizer, but I'm going to close everything here, and you're going to hear hopefully a good difference. This is only for the ozone master stuff. Let's go. Wow, system overload, interesting. Okay, you didn't see the system overload. I don't know why that happened, but maybe I need to increase the buffer size. I don't know. But what I can hear is the equalizer does the biggest change and makes a cleaner mix. A lot of stuff is kind of mid-range based. So when this area is boosts, what I hear is basically I can hear the guitar better, I can hear the drums better, and I think without this equalizer it is masking a lot. So normally when I do the mix, I don't leave anything for mastering. I don't want to fix anything in mastering. So normally when I close every single plugin here, I'm somewhat pleasant with what I do. But this equalizer is making it much easier to hear the whole idea and the drums. And in the later areas like the chorus, you can hear that everything is much easily hearable. I'm not the best guy with the English. Now I'm going to close this equalizer, and in the chorus I want you to listen to guitars. Guitars are full now, and you can actually hear the attack much better. So it definitely helps with the mix, and these moves that I make, it can be done through the individual buses like the guitar bus and the whole rhythm guitar bus and the drum bus. But when I do it here, I left it as it is because first, it's a demo, and two, it's not a huge difference. Like, I'm not increasing 6 decibels and on a certain frequency band. But even, 2 decibels, 1.7 decibels is a big move normally to my understanding and my mastering. I am closing Ozone, and I want to actually close everything here. I learned that from Connor. I'm going to enable them one by one, and hopefully you will hear the difference, and I will talk about the Gullfoss and Soothe right after that. It was actually not fair. Maybe I could just split the limiter in the next time, because limiter does the biggest change, so maybe it's not easy to understand how tape is affecting, which is increasing the low end very nicely. And exciter, for example, it adds some very small amount of saturation because mix is too low for that. It is making the cymbals and the guitar more present, basically. But on the next time, I'm gonna keep that in mind. I will have a third instance for limiter, so I can easily actually explain this. Next step is mix bus. But before going in the stereo out, you will see 3 plugins. I'm gonna quickly talk about it. Right now, I'm using Sennheiser AC650, and this is the most decent flat EQ when it comes to price performance. And if I open this area, you're not gonna hear anything processed with this. It's just for me, and it's set to my studio acoustic environment. If I close this and change this Sennheiser HD650, you can see that there are certain moves that this calibration program does, and it basically creates a flat EQ, and mixes that I made can translate easily and easier basically to the other environments. Of course, this doesn't mean that it'll translate 100%. It'll be exactly the same when you hear. It's impossible, but still it helps a lot. And when I'm mixing, I constantly use it, because if I open the studio again, you will see that there's a huge this is the before. This is normally, the purple one is what I have in the living room, which sucks very badly. And after this is the calibration, and I can also and after this everything, basically this is what we actually get. It's simulated, but I'm considering a very, very flatter EQ that is actually fixing a lot of stuff. And I always have this boominess in the mix, but when I use this, it actually calibrates the room. And if I'm using this headphones, it also calibrates that, so I get a better mix. And these Pro Qs are just my rough EQ moves that I did it by copy pasting from the Sound ID, because also CPU extensive. So they're just closed right now, and even if I open it, enable it, you're not gonna hear it. Okay, the next part is the mix bus. We have only 2 things here. May sound a little bit weird, but for the demo, I put certain stuff on the instrumental bus, certain stuff on the mix bus. And normally I have like 5 different plugins here, but I think I went a little bit simpler this time. So let's close this. Oh, sorry, I actually forgot to talk about these guys. Let me talk about them first because it's actually the same thing and it working a little bit differently. Let's start with the Soothe. Soothe is a dynamic processing throughout the frequency range, and you're basically smoothing the sounds, or like in the future I'm going to show it to you, you can create space for another instrument through side chaining. I'm going to talk about it later. But when I play, you will see very small moves. This is a preset, it's called Balance to the Grammy Awards, and it's actually mixed 20%, and it does a pretty good job and smoothing overall stuff, and it's pretty hard to hear. I hope you will. Everything adds up when it comes to mastering, and this is one of those very important steps. I'm going to close it. As you can see, because they have a very nice UI, so it's also a visual process, you can actually see the moves are pretty small, but what it does definitely adds up, especially on a mid-range. It cleans a little bit and it helps me a lot. I can even dial this a little bit more and probably be happy. Okay, as promised, Gullfoss. So this is Gullfoss Master, and this is Gullfoss Mix, basically. But they don't call it Mix, it's just Gullfoss. This is an amazing plugin. It's also automatic like Soothe. In this Soothe, you don't have to change, certain parameters when you give that frequency range. It activates the searches throughout the range. That's why it's a little bit CPU extensive, and it works pretty good and in an automatic way. Gullfoss is not so different, but what it does, it's definitely different. It's basically listens the mix and it opens the mix up in a way that you are going to hear it more cleanly. That's maybe called binaural processing or something like that, because it also changes a little bit what happens with the instruments and how you perceive them in 3D world when you're listening. So I'm going to close the master first. This will be a little bit smaller, but this mix one, I dialed it a little bit more in numbers. Maybe you can see that, and it definitely makes a huge difference. So let's bypass the master one, and I'm going to play it, and after that I will enable like in the middle, and you will realize about difference hopefully. Definitely something small that adds up. I normally don't hear a big difference, huge difference. Again, this is something that adds up, don't get me wrong. But Gullfoss Master is something that I kind of put first in a master bus without even thinking. When I dial it, I think it a little bit, try to understand it if it affecting a certain area. But besides that, it's something that I just put it there. Okay, now we are on the mix bus, and now I'm going to talk about the mixed version of the Gullfoss. There's another version, it's live, it's basically working real time, but I think it is a little bit harsh in changes because it's kind of rough. And it's definitely not so CPU extensive, but it's not something that I use for real time as well. This mix one is dialed with recover 25% and tame 26%. This is the usual stuff that I go for. If the initial mix is too dark, I brighten it. I do it for both Gullfoss instances, for both mix and master one. And I brighten it by 9% here, and bias is 14. When I dial this, I definitely don't hear too much, but I dial it in a way that it's gonna make sense, and when I bypass it, I will understand the difference. That's my main goal when I check the bias. Now I will bypass the whole thing, and I'm gonna play it, and I will enable it. To me, it tames the attack, cleans the drums, and especially the initial frequencies, the root frequencies of the guitar is cut a little bit. So that is also creating a cleaner mix, but it is also a little bit conflicting with what I do on the ozone. But I should remind you that Gullfoss is dynamically working and ozone is static, just working as a regular EQ. The next guy is Tape Machine. Tape Machine plugins are all about working on a low end and also creating unique saturations and a bit of analogness, if that makes sense, because in the digital world we lost this originality through gear saturation and imperfection, and that's why it is used in many places, and I used this one everywhere. I use it really everywhere. You will be annoyed by that, but it helps a lot. And the speed is actually pretty important. If you decrease the IPS, it's gonna boost a little bit more low end. At least that's the idea that I get when I hear it. And you can also change the tape type, but I'm not quite sure if machine type is creating a huge difference. To my ears, this is the least amount of difference that I get, but I'm not very well trained when it comes to this kind of stuff. So let me close this one and enable it in the middle. Yeah. Kick is much more present, and as you can see, I didn't even make it 15 IPS because I did it on the kick. We're gonna talk about that, but it is actually day and night difference. That's why Virtual Tape Machine is one of the best plugins that I normally use. Of course, there are a lot of alternatives to that, but still, I really like it. The next step is instrument bus. I want to talk about one thing. FX, meaning the samples, risers, and impacts, going to the mix bus if this is the same project as I leave it. Nope, not on this one. That's the next one. If I make a mix rundown for the next one, you will actually realize I work a little bit differently now, but it's not this project, so sorry. But the lead guitars going to the mix bus, it's not going to the instrument bus, because what I learned when it comes to solo guitars, soloing in general over a track, or vocal processing, that it does not go to the instrument bus. It goes to the mix bus. Same goes for the orchestral layers. That's also something I learned from Connor on his last mix rundown, so I definitely recommend that. That being said, let's continue with the mix bus. Oops, sorry, instrument bus, wrong. Let's open these guys. These always come together, gray and red. I know what they're emulating, but I don't want to make a mistake because my memory is not the best one when it comes to things like that. These are notice presets from prayer position mix. That's the first these are actually the first two presets that I learned from Nolly. The gray is kind of based on, there's a high pass filter here. This is very important. It's set on 60 and it's fast attack and fast release based. It's mostly taming the snare and gluing over the song, and normally what you're looking for is a 4:1 compression on end, 4 decibels on this meter. That's how I set it up, and all I change is the threshold most of the time. Other than that, I am actually using the glue mix, and if I'm doing something very punchy, huge riffs, wall of sound, I mostly use the punchy one. So I also tried those, pretty nice stuff. And the red is kind of the same. I'm not touching too much. There's a bit of drive, a little bit of extra gain, and I compressed like a decibel in the meter. So hopefully if I did my job, that's what you're gonna see. And hopefully when I disable and enable these, you will realize there's a huge difference because it's top-down mixing. When I change something here, when I add or remove something from here, it changes overall processing on every single instrument. Let's disable these, and I'm going to add them one by one. Whoops, wrong button. Okay. As you can hear, the gray compressor does the big part of this compression, and without it, snare is just dead. It's too dynamic. It's going up and dying. There are no transients that can be easily heard in the mix by itself. Of course, if you solo that, if I solo that, you're gonna hear that, but in the song, that gray and red compression is actually pretty important. And after the whole drum mix and maybe bass, you can put these, but it all depends. Sometimes I work a little bit differently. And the next one is Soothe, but it works a little bit different, isn't it? Bass 16 is the lead guitars, and since the lead guitar is sent to the mix bus, which is over instrument bus, what I do is to create space for lead guitars. This is a soft processing, fast attack and release. I don't want to push too much, and I only process midsection because lead guitars are only in the mid area. Of course, if there's a stereo delay, it's gonna leak into the stereo ping pong stuff. Or maybe it is also something like you have a huge reverb and you used imager. It may also be different for you. Maybe you need to dial this a little bit differently. But this is how I use it. This is sidechain and creating space for a lead. So I have this small solo, and I would like to show you what it does. I'm going to bypass it like this, and I'm gonna turn it on in the middle. It's a big difference, but it's not a big difference because I have this lead guitar pretty upfront. And if it would be a little bit in the slung level, like Metallica Black Album kind of stuff, you would hear that it's actually crashing the guitars. But to my ears, it's actually cleaning the leads a lot in the mix. With Soothe, I am doing a lot of sidechain processing. And this sidechain processing is kind of a little bit extensive, and my work process is much more different than any other people out there. I'm not proud of it, but at the same time, it helps a ton when I'm working with Soothe. So yeah, in the future, I will use probably more tracks, change the cabs, IRs constantly to find sounds that fit into the mix a little bit more, and probably I'm going to use this Soothe with a little bit less push, hopefully. Okay, that being said, I'm going to talk about the parallel processing, which is not too much, not so much. There is one distressor. It's 20-1, and it also has the high pass filter. And what I sent here is, let's check it together. If I press this beautiful button, it's going to show us that I'm sending rhythm guitars. I'm sending a little bit of overheads, definitely toms, snare, and kick. This is what I do, because these are the instruments that are creating the energy and the overall theme of the song. I can also send the bass, but I don't see any reason. Sometimes I do it just because I want to have that clanky bass push in the mix, but besides that, it's normally out of the question. And I'm going to disable it like this, and when I play it, I'm going to enable it. You will definitely see it and definitely hear it. Not this section, because lead is taken over. Main riff is a much better example in my opinion. It's helping a ton. I pushed this a little bit too much, but I am very happy with the result, because the main riff is pretty fast. I mean, even though it's not a Jason Richardson song or a riff, it's a metalcore stuff, and considering to metalcore riffs, it's a little bit fast. That's why when I send the guitars, I get more of the first note attack. Normally, I'm also supporting this through the synthesizers, but in this project, I didn't use any synthesizers. I used Rabea, Archetype Rabea. And that's why I needed a little bit more guitars in the parallel compression. Let's continue. We are going to talk about kicks now. Let me click to kick. There is a lot of processing. That's a lot of processing, but hopefully it is actually, you know what? let's talk about drum bus, because it's a top-down mixing, so why not we're talking about that. I have Nolly's instrumental bus magic, but we all know, hopefully, if you're watching me enough times, you will understand that how much I love Nolly and his ideas, his processing, his presets, whatever Nolly has a name on it. And normally this instrumental bus magic was actually an instrumental bus magic, but it's not now, not anymore. This distressor came as a parallel compression to drum bus. I kept it and I still have a parallel compression because I want to push it a little bit more and make it a little bit more present. My drum mixes are a little bit huge and it takes a whole lot of space in the mix, and sometimes it's much better to level them in a different way and have this parallel compression options a little bit more pushed. So that's actually the reason I still have the distressor here, and I also have a parallel compression. And this again, I'm not going to talk about what this one is emulating, but I think this was a Pultec. I just don't know which model was it. But this FGN and CSEQ, both guys were in the mix bus for Nolly in the many projects, like in the pre-position mix. I think it was also in there like P4 times. Now he's using that in a drum bus, and I know it, so I also moved that to drum bus. It definitely changes the mix, and drums, or when you move it to drums, you will realize that overall mix gets darker because of this push on 12K. But at the same time, for drums, it's actually more present and better. For that reason, I also moved that there. I'm going to show that to you by disabling and enabling. Let's do it. That's a huge difference, huge. And the next one is SSL native bus compressor. Thanks to Slate Digital, now I also have access to SSL stuff, and they're amazing. And I'm using this compressor for pushing it a little bit more, and also taming the snare a little bit more, gluing it into the drum mix. That is my whole goal with this. I am sure that it's a little bit overkill with the drum stuff. That's why in the future demos I will focus more on to the turbo mixed stuff, because it takes a lot of time, and I am also losing a little bit more clarity through doing this overkill stuff. But to my ears, it is much better to keep it. That's why I actually left it. I am constantly adding new plugins and try to understand if it's beneficial to have that in a certain track or a bus. And for this one, it was pretty beneficial. So let's disable and enable it, and hopefully you will like it. As you can hear, the ghost notes especially are more present now. I think it's because of the parallel compression bus that I just showed to you, plus this one is creating a little bit more space for the drums first, then moving the whole drum bus a little bit up, lifting it basically. So the next step is to check kick. By the way, this GDP5 is the first stereo output of this one. I also need to talk about this one, right? You're also wondering what I'm using. This is GDP5. I love this one. There is nothing over it. Like, I'm not using turbos if I remember correctly. I remember closing everything. Yeah, exactly. In the toms, I have a little bit of envelope because toms are creating bigger transients and decays that I don't like. I just want the attack and the transient a little bit, and just gone. That is how I hear it. That is how I want it. I'm sure Matt Halpern, if he see this, he'd just swear to me. But still, rest is pretty much the same. I may add here and there a couple of stuff like increasing the bottom snare and whatnot. It's all about the taste. It's all about what I like. It's all about what you like when you're actually dialing this. I normally add One Kit Wonder Architects to this to have other cymbals, maybe support the snare here. It kind of depends if it's a low tune snare. Normally I am doing it. If it's mid or high tune snare on the P5, I'm not doing it. I use different augmentation samples. And let's close this. And since there's no turbo, this first GDP5, hopefully we won't see anything. Yeah, we didn't hear anything. If there's a turbo, it'll be on the first stereo. That's why I am not using this as a kick. I'm using this one as a kick. Third and fourth output, meaning the second stereo output. Let's continue with kick. So these gains are to create space for the faders, for the mix, for the overall stuff. I don't know why, but my whole drum mix, my output from Contact is too loud, and for this reason I have this -12 reduction in volume. That's maybe not the best thing, but so far it didn't create any issues. But I also don't want to keep these gain plugins. For that reason, I'm actually planning to revisit my Contact templates and check if there's a possible way to decrease everything in a way that it's gonna sound the same for the drum mix. I also don't want to lose turbo stuff. I'm closing this, and let's start with the EQ. My EQs are mostly shit because I always act overall stuff. I don't notch here. I trust Sooth most of the times for notching, and actually it was very well processed to my ears that I normally don't put too much stuff to kick and snare for resonance stuff. If it's Invasion, I'm sure there's so many unprocessed stuff. Even though he's not so proud compared to what they have in the plugins and libraries right now. So for that reason, and all I did is add a little bit of presence here and cut highs and lows, and the original kick frequencies, this area, I pushed it a little bit. I didn't do anything. I also cut this area. I'm doing this on toms and on kick, and also on the guitars a little bit. On the guitars, it's a little bit 300 to 400 ish area. It is creating a little bit more space, and I think they are using a certain word for it, but that area creates muddiness to my ears normally when it's too dialed in. That's why we have that. The next step is actually two different instances of virtual mix rack. I'm in love with virtual mix rack. And by the way, I will disable and enable everything. I just, for some reason, decided to talk about it first. The first one is Nolly's Kick Magic. It's not doing a huge processing, but it definitely helps a lot. This shimmer is adding a bit of air. This thickness helping kick the, I'm not gonna say shine, but increasing the low end a little bit. There is this tube collection. I think this one adds some tube saturation. And this custom opto is supposed to be an aggressive, it says here, compressor. And this was an experiment. I already had actually my own processing, but when I added, it was much better in the mix, so I kept it. That's, I will be completely honest. Like, I am not, as you can see, I have more shimmer and thickness here. I increase it even more. So not everything I do is serving that ultimate professional sound purpose. And this is actually something that I actually took as a mental note for next demo. This one is pretty similar. Normally how I go with drum mix is that I follow the metal presets that I have with the Slate Digital things. And I reset everything. I move the frequency bands a little and I push like 10 dB. And I understand how effective a certain region for that certain sound, kick or snare, doesn't matter. And if I like the sound of it or if it's adding too much stuff, I decide to cut it. And if it's something like creating the original sound, like the timbre of that kick, I'm boosting that certain frequency to make it a little bit more present in there. And same goes for this VCA compressor. I use this heavily, almost on every single place. So you're gonna see this more often, but how much you dial is always different. And I have a little bit big moves here to make this kick to have more air and presence. And I have too much shimmer actually. Wow, that's interesting. But it's actually 1%. It just adds a bit of air. I have the kick here. As you can see, this is 15 IPS analog tape machine. And I changed the tape type to 456 G. And the last bit of it is actually something I did for the bass. This is sidechain to bass. Bass creates space for kick, and kick bass creates space for bass through soothe, and I will talk about it in a bit. But what I want to do is to disable everything first. Whoops, not this one. And I will enable it one by one. The last one won't create a difference because the bass is not playing at the moment. So adding that won't change a thing, but bass guitar's root frequency is in this area, and I'm creating a little bit of space on every bass attack. And that being said, that was the kick. Let's continue with the snare. And in the snare, as you can see, we have less plugins. Very interesting. Gain is just the same thing, just creating a little bit more space in the faders for drums. I just put it down basically. And for the EQ, what the hell is that? Normally my moves, especially in this 5 to 10k region, is a little bit more, but I cut the unnecessary area from with high pass and low pass stuff, and after that I push the root frequency, and I create space again by cutting from this 3 to 500 area, and I apparently push this part. I don't have any notches, and I think I added this to make this move a little bit smoother. But yeah, my EQ moves, again, not extremely important, which is actually a bad thing, I know. And I a little bit more trust what I do in the virtual mix rack, this one here. I trust this one a little bit more, because when I see that I'm making a big move, I hesitate. But when I do it, it's just a couple of knobs, and if it sounds good, I say yeah, okay, I don't care, because it sounds good. That's why I trust this rack a little bit more. And that's actually the next step, so let's talk about it. I actually have this punch snare preset from Slate Digital, but I changed it a little bit. There is a bit of push here. Also, I cut apparently 600. I pushed the 84 range. After cutting till 150, I think it's a good thing to bring a couple stuff back. That's what I probably heard and decided to push. We have a little bit of push, not a little bit, a lot, on 3.5. And lastly, I have this shelf boost with a dB or not, or a little bit more. I used the revival hugely by adding shimmer and thickness. I actually don't know if this 0 to 40 is kind of important. Of course it is. You're increasing something, hopefully. But I don't know what is that. Is 40 dB? Of course, no, I don't think so. But what it is, I actually don't know. But I must have dialed it. Okay way. We have custom series lifts. There is no low lift, but on the high lift there's some moves going on, like 6.2 on the present option. And a tube collection, Hollywood, another tape saturation. The next step is actually using Soothe for dampen the snare. This is one of those presets from here. Okay, this was actually something from the guys themselves. It's an Oak Sound preset, sorry. And after this one, we have another virtual tape machine, but the speed is 30 IPS, of course not 15. I'm focusing more on snares roots here. And I'm going to, and of course there's a gain, but this is to push and put it in a place where I will be happy with the compression. I'm going to disable these. Gains are there. Parallel stuff is there. But I'm going to solo snare and I will add these moves one by one. As you can hear, it makes a huge difference, especially both virtual mix rack and tape machine is creating a huge difference. What I'm actually pretty interested is, normally I use soothe at the end always. On this one I decided to make it much, one before I have Virtual Technician as the last one. I wonder what was I thinking. And for the next one, I need to find a space where I use the toms, which is this section. So we have a really nice fill here. And if we check toms, sorry, in solo, you're hearing that boomy transient that I normally don't like. I don't push the envelope too much because the rest is kind of in the mix. It's not too loud and I'm not kind of irritated by that. In toms, we have only Saturn. Let me check if there's extra processing. Of course there is. Of course there is. Let's start with the Saturn. I use this one always actually for the toms. What I do is pushing almost 6 dB and adding a warm tape saturation, cutting the mids, and not doing anything with the lows. That's the tom bus processing in a nutshell. But what I do with the rack tom, and actually all the other stuff, is cutting certain area. Since it's a metal tom, I'm creating this V-shape cut around 400. And apparently I boosted and added a bit of presence and air here. I think the virtual mix rack plugins are, again, the highly untouched presets here. As you can see, my drum mix is kind of trusted. It's just a lot of delegation and tweaking, which I really like on the Slate digital presets. And this is actually something that I really want to talk about. Guys, I am not an audio engineer and I'm not planning to be. I'm a solo artist that does everything by himself. And in this journey, everything I learned helping me to understand this stuff more and more. And using presets, it's not hurting anyone. Plus, when you are still in the learning process, I'm doing this for the last 3 to 4 years. And if you ask me to create a preset, a whole drum mix without using presets, I still can do it. But it doesn't mean that I should do it. These workflows, these rack presets are actually pretty good. And all I need to do is reset. And after that, dial myself. That's most of the time what I follow if I am working on a drum mix that I really want to have like my own. And most of the times it's pretty beneficial to have something like this. That being said, I followed rack toms here, and I probably changed the compression value. And for the floor tom, I have similar moves, but not adding too much air, and I'm still following the floor tom preset here. That's about it with the toms. And what I want to do here is to play toms, but first I'm going to enable all Pro Qs, then all virtual mix virtual mix racks, and I will add Saturn afterwards. Let's do it. If you heard Saturn difference, it's day and night. Everything adds, to a certain degree. To my ears, EQ cleans up, virtual mix rack boosts, and compresses, and Saturn pushes and makes it a little bit more present and cleaner. The next stuff is overheads. Overheads have a lot of stuff, but individually they don't have anything. It's just completely processed over overheads. So let's click to the main riff again, and I'm gonna solo this, and I will close these and I will add one by one. Actually, I'm gonna add from here. The last soothe again working against rhythm guitars, so it's not changing anything. But I did a cut to remove these bleeds for the kick and the snare, but I don't remove them entirely. And I have this dynamic EQ to control a little bit of the cymbals. The next stuff is overheads metal. It's helping a ton and it's pushing a ton on the high frequencies. That's very important. There's again, I'm not gonna talk about the emulations, but we have FGN and FGS working together, and at the end I have a compression. And it is also triggered by the snare, which is very important thing. If you don't remove the whole snare bleed, the compression will work against that. So just for if you have a special gate or something like that, you can work with it. But I actually like to have it and also include it in the process. It has a little bit, it's adding to the transients for me. And the next step is the fresh air, which by the way, this is a free plugin that you can use. I use it everywhere. Thanks to this one, I recreated the In Stasis Monuments mix, especially with the kicks and snare. And this is pretty good. And I'm using this one right now for the cymbals because they're mostly high frequencies. Let me actually close that, and you're gonna hear it now, and I enable it. It's making it a little bit more present. And this soothe is a completely Nolly made preset. I don't touch too much, maybe at all, not sure. That is also a pretty good addition. Like 20, maybe 15% of what I do is kind of already given. Gullfoss, Soothe, and certain presets are doing a lot of really nice jobs here. And it is only applicable to metal. And if I change to another genre, like, I don't know, rock, country, whatever, I will have a different working process. I will have different reference tracks. I will have different compression settings for the drum mix. I will have a different room sound. That being said, the next step is the room. I have only two plugins here. One cleanup EQ, and another one is Mutual Mix Rack Room Mix Insanity. I used another preset, and I dialed the compression. When I have this compression stuff, then I add a new compression. What I do is kind of pretty basic. I understand first what I need to achieve, and after that I am dialing the ratio without even touching the threshold yet. It's not compressing anything. And I set the attack and release. Attack a little bit faster and release like in here, like 3. Not so fast. And I start dialing, and after a couple of dB's compression, or maybe more depending on what am I processing actually, I think about if I need to change attack and release values, and after that I continue to dial for the compression amount, and I finish with the changing output and changing the overall volume, maybe add a trimmer just to make it even. The compressed and uncompressed level should be as close or ideally matching, so that I can actually understand and judge if there's a huge difference or not, because volume levels are also deceiving you, and it's a very important aspect if you think about it. And this is Room, and let's hear the whole drum mix for the main riff. Yeah, I hope you like it. It's a completely from scratch kind of drum mix, and the next step is actually the bass. With the bass, we have tons of plugins, and some of them are actually my cheat codes. Let's start with the Pro Q. Again, cutting a little bit of this is right after root. This is to create space for the guitars, but I'm pretty surprised that I have 400 push here. Normally I cut like this. I give it a little bit of presence, and I use Nolly bass here, right? Yeah, I use Nolly bass here. Let me show it to you. Oops, it's glitching. It does that when you change the screens. Contact issue, I guess. I'm using Nolly bass heavy, a little bit of sub and tone added. I don't change humanize. I don't think I change muting noise, I'm not quite sure. This is on the riffer setting. I'm not quite sure if I used position override. I normally do. But if I don't have too much problem with the programming, I have time for it, I don't think about how it's actually played here. I try to follow the same string skipping, same string mentality that I have with the guitar. If I'm jumping to an octave, I also jump here. I don't care if it's in the first root note, if it's playing on the 6th string or 4th string or whatnot. Not sure if it's the best idea, but it helped me a lot. So that's the reason I'm doing it. That being said, I also mentioned about EQ, which surprised me a little because this cut is also a little bit big. The next one, oh wait, let's hear it first. Sorry, I'm gonna add one by one. It's not the most original, authentic, someone literally played it kind of bass, I know. I really want to have a very high quality bass that I actually can trust and use. I have really nice well-built Harley Bentons, but playing the bass is a different art. Really, I mean, it actually is. And I'm pretty sure that I need a lot of experience with the bass before I actually play it like a bassist and contribute to my demos as a bass player. For that reason, maybe I'm using too much processing just because I cannot come up with this authentic, really nice attack, and I try to cover up with trying to program a little bit better. I don't think so, but hopefully in the future I definitely see myself trying more and more, adding the bass tones that I actually create. But most of the time when I'm using bass libraries and stuff, Nolly bass is here because it has Nolly on its name. No, it's not because of that. It's because when it first came out, I didn't have the Gene bass, and I just did a bit of price comparison. That's all. Gene bass has much more articulations. Nolly bass is actually pretty targeted library. How Nolly plays, that's what we get. And if you are looking for more articulations, definitely Gene bass is a better option. And hopefully in the future I want to have that too, because I have much more experience with submachine audio stuff. But Nolly bass sounds pretty great. And when I dial it on a DI pretty well and program it pretty well, and I dial a really nice tone with parallax, I'm really happy. So yeah, I just want to mention that. It's not bitching about any libraries or whatsoever, but I think it's an important thing because sometimes I really want to follow the exact same articulation with the guitar, but I'm unable to. That's a little bit unfortunate to me, at least. So the next plugin is Virtual Mix Rack, which is using the metal bass, and I tweaked it to my taste. And it compresses a little bit more than I actually remember. The next step, since I am tweaking stuff, I don't talk about every single boost and cut, because some of them are there because I like how they sound. It's not because I gave those decisions by knowing every single detail. We have Infinity Bass, which is using punchy because I like punchy basses, basically. I boosted the character a little bit, frequency to find its roots, or how finding the target frequency that is actually the bass is working on. And also this amount, I am at 60%, which is a little bit high considering how I would normally dial Infinity Bass. This is a great plugin. I really like that. Probably electronic guys using a little bit more than me because they have a lot of bass synths. I only use it for the bass guitar. And the last plugin is for the bass. 15 IPS tape type FG9 tape machine. Again, I use it everywhere, as I mentioned, and since it's a bass instrument, low-end instrument, I have lower IPS value here. These two Sooth instances doing two different stuff. I know about this one, but I need to click here. Tones, yeah, of course. Because I started from a preset, but I don't understand why I use the same preset here. Sorry. The left one is only working against the kick. Whenever there's a kick happening, only mid processing, as you can see. I am ducking a lot of the bass. And normally people do it with sidechain EQs, they do it with sidechain multiband compression, but when I have a soothe, and when I have this very big curve, very big area, which is, I think it starts declining around 125, which is much higher than how kick works, where kick works basically. And even if I change kick samples, I don't care, because I have the side chain, I know how this soothe will work, and it's ducking regardless. And I can always stress this preset without changing anything, which is very important for me. But actually the attacks on most of these stuff are not at fast. It's on 1 millisecond, which is actually wrong. Sorry, is it not millisecond, right? Does it say anything regarding values? It just says how quickly. Maybe it is a multiplier, I don't know. But it's not processed fast. Normally I'm always using fast attack, fast release for suit stuff. That's a mistake. I updated all the presets, but these are old values. It worked for this demo, so I'm fine. But normally it's not something I was using. That attack was kind of wrong. This is working against the last section, as you can hear. Whenever we hear toms, it just ducks the bass, so toms can actually breathe. They have the space for to be heard basically. And if I close it, it's not a day and night difference, but it creates a lot of difference. Especially normally this soothe moves that I do is showing itself if the sidechain instrument has a lower velocity or more dynamic. For the toms on this demo, they have higher velocities, but if it's like 70, 80, 90, I'm gonna lose them in a mix. So that is a pretty important note actually. And that is bass. And next parts are guitars. I will talk about rhythm guitars, because supporting guitars are normally just clean ambience for me. But in the Architects demo, Archetype Rabea demo, sorry. In this Archetype Rabea demo, every single decision I made for adding a synthesizer or an impact, even though I have a lot of impact samples here, it was, I asked this question to myself, can I make this with Archetype Rabea? And if I can, I will do it. That was the most of the time what I was looking for. So let's talk about guitars. Rhythm guitars don't have anything here. Everything goes to rhythm guitar and I handle it there. Normally it's not the best approach. Normally I have certain important EQ moves in their own individual channels, or I use the EQ in the Neural DSP plugin that I use. And after that, if I'm happy, then I go to the rhythm guitar bus and do processing for the whole bus. Let's close everything and hear it first, then I will start talking. Hopefully you heard that these soothes didn't do anything because I soloed them. And how I work is basically I boost and cut some stuff through EQ. I control it by using multi-band compression, so it's pretty easy. I'm not going to talk about the multi-band. I hope you know that. If you have dynamic EQ or multi-band compression in your muted notes, if you duct them and glue them, you will create a more controlled guitar. So it helps with the chucks, basically. That's the easier explanation. So I boosted the root area, the main notes. I did a very, very small cut. It's just, I think, the smooth out the second boost here, which was around 500. I actually surprised myself with these EQs. Wow. And I did a big, not so big, cleanup after 70 hertz here, and I cut above 1300. And of course, it's a smooth cut, so it's not hard cutting and canceling those frequencies. It is very important if you need to clean up and smoothen your guitar. If you're into metal, you need to have this low pass filter. And mostly I even go further than that. Like I can go to 10K, maybe 9K, depending on what am I working on. So this EQ is pretty fundamental for guitar processing. The next one, after the multiband compression, is a Pultec EQ. Again, I dialed it to my taste. I boosted some 129. I did a compensation EQ, but I actually didn't cut anything, so there must be a reason for this. And it works over 39 hertz, so there's actually a high pass here. I didn't touch here. This is 6.48. I add a bit of presence and finally an air. So I made the whole guitar more present, hopefully. Sometimes it's making it a little bit more sizzly, and normally when you isolate the guitar, it's not so pleasant to hear that way, but in the mix, it works. And I suggest you mix these instruments not in solo, but in groups, like groups of 3. Drum, bass, bass, guitar. Ambient guitar, drums, bass. Ambient guitar, rhythm guitar, bass. Ambient guitar, samples, guitars. Things like that. And when you do it, you actually come closer for a cleaner mix. And hopefully it won't affect your decisions and create more problems, because if you know what you do, it's actually helping a lot. Or you can alternatively just level everything against the pink noise and start from chorus and mix everything from chorus and automate afterwards. An alternative method that I'm actually planning to use. The next step is this compression. Again, I use this for a one everywhere, mostly on circuit 1. And I think I aimed for 3 to 5 dB depending on my chugs. Yep, 3 dB. And we have a little bit more air in presence. I cut from 600 area. I think I was trying to fix my mistakes with the ProQ there. And I boosted a little bit more in my fundamental frequencies of the guitar. And the next step is tooth. This is guitar spike. It is Nolly preset. It helps a lot. You only need to dial the depth value and the rest is done. Definitely use it if you have Sooth. There are alternatives to Sooth. I don't know what are they, because I use Sooth and I'm very happy with Sooth. That's why I cannot tell any other alternatives, or I cannot recommend anything regarding to this one, but these Nolly presets, it's working great. There are 2 sidechain stuff here. One is again snare. Normally I use compression, sidechain compression. Whenever snare hits, even with the hardest hits, it should duck the guitars like a decibel. But alternatively, just for this demo, I used this soothe instance, 0.9 attack. It's in the hard setting. It's really selective, and I only worked on the fundamentals, not overall, which is a little bit different. It's definitely much more different than how I used sidechain compression here. I'm not quite sure if I will continue to use this, but we can talk about it later. This is to create space for ambient guitars and synthesizers, mostly on the high sides, high frequency side. Even though this is still a fundamental area for the guitar, in a very, very selective way, I smooth the guitar in a way that these clean guitars will shine. This is working very well, and if you have soothe, definitely recommend to do something like this. But next time when I'm working on, again, as I mentioned, I will create as many tracks as possible, because I don't think it's a good idea to have as less tracks as possible. As you can see, all the tracks I use are very busy. But when I use, when I watch Connor's stuff, I have at most 13 guitars here, right? He has 20-25 minimum of guitar tracks, which has different sound, different purposes, different pushes. Instead of automating, he's creating another track, which is a very clever idea. I totally support this, and hopefully it'll be my goal for next time. And for intro and for synth guitar, there's not much to tell, but I can actually let you hear the synth guitar here, because it's pretty interesting. Because it's nothing. I'm gonna show it to you. It's pretty weird. I'm using this for boosting the breakdown. It's not, as you can see, I named solo down because it started as a breakdown. Then I said, maybe I can add a little bit more leads, because it's a demo for a plugin and lead tones are great with Archetype Rabea. So that's why I actually put this here. Normally in the breakdown, what I do, let me show it to you. This is Archetype Rabea, and I used, of course, only Archetype Rabea. Alternatively, what I do, I use Gojira for this kind of purposes. I transposed to 1 octave down. I used a synth here. Normally I don't use synth. No, wait, this is not synth. This is dual compressor and mid gain. Very interesting. I thought this was a synth. My bad. And there are no effects here whatsoever, and I'm not using the synth as well. But what I do, not here, what I do is here. Yeah, what I do is here. I don't know why I didn't use that EQ and add myself, but weird. I normally should push like 50, 60, 80 area, but I didn't want to conflict with the bass there. I instead pushed the main guitar frequencies, and I cut anything after 400. It's again a slow cut. It actually cuts like after 1K. Oops, wrong button. But it's helping only for the low frequencies. I want to sound a little bit fuller. That's my goal there. The next step is the clean. I need to solo every single thing here. Let's start with, the names are very bad, but let's talk about the support guitars as a bass, and I will solo everything so you can hear what kind of stupid stuff I added actually. So we have 1 channel EQ to cut for guitars and increase a little bit presence so that I will have more of the clean this supporting guitars heard throughout the mix. That move was the last move that I actually added, if I remember correctly. We have one tape machine working with 30 IPS FG456 on 2-inch 16-track machine type. And I always look for the peaks and check if it's actually saturated through the tape machine. And Soothe is working against the rhythm guitars and creating space for the real riff, the real idea. And it works only side. That's very important. Closing this, and let's hear this guy. This is clean C, which has no meaning. It's supposed to be just clean guitar because it provides the main melody. Let's listen to it. As you can hear, it's doing a lot of stuff to create an environment, a background that is providing the vibe. It's nothing more than that. The arpeggiated stuff, as you can see, I'm not playing anything. I just hit 0, which is, it wasn't drop C sharp, so it's just C sharp. It's arpeggiated everything. As you can see, the mix is 100%. I'm using C sharp minor, down, up arpeggio pattern with 1 octave. And I also added the 7th to make it a little bit more interesting. And of course, I synced it, so I don't have to set a certain value. It's just work against the DAWs. 140 BPM right now. I don't remember if I changed actually the... Yeah, in the chorus it's 150 and the rest is 140. So it's actually much better to make it over the DAWs stuff, BPM stuff. I have only mid to high mids used for the arpeggiation, and let's hear it now. It's pretty interesting actually. It's a really nice arpeggiation, and I just, okay, yeah, it sounds nice, I accept it, and that's, you know, how that happened. I didn't do anything else. I liked it, I thought it's interesting, I thought it shows the potential of the Rabea, and I just kept it as it is. The next one is Impact. Again, there's a bit of EQ done with this. I also used a couple of stuff, added a Pultec EQ and a distressor to control what's happening in there. And this is actually an impact thing. When you hear it, you're gonna think like, why this guy added this? It doesn't make any sense, but it does in context. Sorry, it's actually an impact, just an impact. It's a different impact. It's not like a real impact sample. It is, however, we can maybe think about impact with notes, you know, if you are kind of familiar with the sample packs, they're atonal stuff, atonal risers, atonal drones and such, and they're also normal C sharp drone, or I don't know, D minor outro riser, things like that. Like this one was kind of based around that. When I dialed it, It's again a 100% mix. We have 0 semitones here. I forgot the name of these waves. Like this one is triangle, this one is, I don't know how to call it, sorry. I detuned them a little just to make it a little bit more original. I changed the modes most of the time. I think this is changing the bitrate. And I changed the cutoff, and this is what happened, and I'm pretty happy with this. Sometimes I was thinking about having the Archetype Rabea just for this creative purposes, because I'm pretty familiar what to make with guitar, but the synth stuff is normally something that you think around a keyboard. At least that was the thing for me. There are a lot of alternatives to play MIDI guitar, not a real MIDI guitar. I'm talking about, having a guitar signal, changing it to MIDI, and adding synthesizer plugins. I don't need it. Archetype Rabea does that. This Overlord synth does that. It looks pretty simple. It's actually pretty simple to dial certain stuff, but it's amazing. It does a lot of stuff. The next one is saw support. When you actually hear it, you will understand. Let's open it first. It's another synth with 100% mix, and it has square waves with 1 octave down, again changing the tune values to make up a little bit interesting stuff, and change the cutoff. And let's hear it. Just as a roll support, it's just following the thing. I think this is one of the plugins in this track. One of the tracks that I added just for the sake of it, but it actually pushes. And as you can see, I cut this one and also this drum guitar, because the second repetition of the chorus, I want to increase the energy. Normally it's a songwriting technique that you can use. Normally you're using on the last chorus instead of in the same chorus, but it helps when you're working on a demo. Next one is clean high layer. Let's hear it first. I swear I didn't steal this from Hades OST, or Hades theme music basically. I love their note, but it wasn't about that. I cut the lows here with an EQ, and what it does is smooth sine waves, 2 octave here, again detuned a little bit differently. I changed the mode to 12. I really think that this is the bit value, and I cut off much less on this one. The next one is October. Let's hear it. I compressed it, and October, I mean, that's the whole idea of the track anyway. There's a bit of fuzz that is pretty helpful, and it's the first clean amp section. Pretty interesting, right? There's no EQ move, and I added a bit of reverb and bit of delay. Normally I think it would be much better idea to remove reverb, actually even delay here, because I realized a lot of instruments here, tracks here, are already spread, reverbed stuff, so maybe it is not a good idea to steal more space from the original guitars. I'm talking about the rhythm guitars, but original guitars, it sounds weird. Anyway, this is the last one, is drone guitars. I'm using this on 69%, what a coincidence, and 12-bit mode with the same cutoff with some of those. I think it was the same with the soul support. And this is a triangle, sorry, not triangle. I don't know what this one's called. Maybe this one is the sawtooth. I don't know. But these are the settings if you are interested. And there's a certain pulse that I'm hearing here, and I really like that. That's actually the real reason I wanted to include this. So yeah, in this course, the second part of the course, you hear everything. So I'm gonna isolate support guitars here, and you're gonna hear how cool they are. Of course, how much you dial is also important. If you put this stuff too much, they're gonna eat the space out of rhythm guitars, so that's important. And something you should think about. The next one is lead guitars. So lead guitar is not the best played stuff, but it's a good one take. There's the original idea here, as you can hear. Sorry, as you can see. There is also this lead layer that I wanted some energy moving, and I felt like clean guitars didn't help enough, even though they have, there are a lot of them. And I had this lead layer. Check this out. That's all. This one is Atlas delay and a lot of reverb, a lot. Shoegaze idea, I would say, but there is no pre-delay, so it's working a little bit differently. And the real lead guitar has a couple of processing. This one does not have too much. It's just an EQ for pushing where it's gonna be prominent and cutting the rest, so it's not gonna create muddiness. A bit of EQ push for the high frequencies, also pushing a bit of 220 and 1.2 kilohertz. I think I dialed this to make wrong button, sorry. I think I did these for a reason while listening, because I don't remember why I did it. So the next one, the lead guitar. I was talking about the lead guitar, right? I have a compression here. I use vintage Fats. It was to control the guitar. It's, of course, Archetype Rabea again. This is a preset. It's called Juicy Lead. And again, I did some cleanup. I pushed the highs. This guitar has a couple of harmonics, and it mostly works around legato, which requires a little bit more high push because there are not many pick attacks that will make it a little bit more present in the mix. So that's why I did a bit cut here, something I listened and decided. And this push is helping me to make it a little bit more present in the mix. And virtual mix rack is using extra crispy vocal preset. I did this many times. If I am doing orchestral stuff, I may use vocal presets from Slate Digital. Same goes for the lead guitars, and it helps a lot because I'm trying to have these vocal lines as guitar lines, and I'm trying to stay in a closer register unless I need to create a bit tension and go a little bit higher frequency. But yeah, that's normally how I work with it. And I don't think I changed too much here. I just dialed the compression like, let's hear it. Yep, like over 3 dB. That was the goal. That most of the time is the goal with the guitars. I don't know why, but I'm looking for that area. I don't think if I go more, the guitar will lose the dynamics. If I'm doing tall stuff, that's okay, but normally in my type of genre and playing, I don't go for it too much. We have little radiator with, actually, this is pretty high considering how I normally dial the mix for saturation. This is, as it said, 1566A preamp. I use this to create a little bit of saturation and make it more present in the mix. And the last plugin is again Guitar Spike to control and smoothen the guitar a little bit. It's another Nolly preset. That was the lead, and we have samples as the last one. There is not much stuff to talk about here, but if I show you the intro, I think you will understand. That's almost every single sample. Actually, you can hear that in the intro. It's a big build up for me. Let's do it like this. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And I have a bit of risers to create intensity. I used fader to make them as less present as the riser first started, and I gradually increased them, and before the sections it helps a lot. If I isolate the risers, they will sound like this. By the way, this Rabea riser is actually one of those presets here. I just exported that and using it as a riser because I have this fader and I just want to use it to have a similar sound and timbre in the riser, and it's going to match the sound that guitars actually have. Because if you put a little strange things like the Ghost Hack riser here, it's still good, but sometimes I try to have some similarities in tones with different tracks. Normally people do it with the sections. They use the same rhythm patterns or tones or melodies and try to come up with something that will be used in many places. This is another songwriting technique, and I just wanted to create a little bit different approach by using the clean and supporting guitars, process or over process them, but still keep the same timbre and use them as risers or impacts or so on. I think it's a good idea, but it is just a creativity move. So it's not a advice or suggestion that I can give you. If you have a Splice account, you don't even need to hear this part. You have everything that you actually need. That is actually all. Now, as promised, you're gonna hear it in the context. You already, I hope, watched the video. So I'm just gonna collapse these small stuff, buses, and I'm gonna choose the cycle and I'm going to play it for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did, again, I have no claim here. This mix rundown is coming from suggestions. People wanted to understand what kind of process I have, what kind of plugins I'm using, how I come up with this audio, how I come up with this demo basically. And I'm hoping that it will be at least a little bit of beneficial. There are no secrets. There are no secret sauce that I use. I have so little moves that I do with big intentions. I follow certain principles, things I learned from watching Nolly, watching In the Mix, doing my own experimentations, the URM Academy videos. I got those ideas and I did my best to learn and apply them. And right now, when I'm working on, as a software developer who has so little time to be actually be a professional audio engineer or a mixer or a master engineer or whatnot, these areas are oceans as guitar is. You can be a guitar player with 50 years of experience and there is still a lot to learn. Same goes for this. And my focus was always efficiency. I'm doing my best in a limited time and I'm trying to come up with a mix, a sound that will be pleasant for me, be pleasant for the listener, which is you, and I am doing my best to keep this in a limited box. This box is limited by time, by ideas, and I also try to limit the creativity side because I have, if I show you how many plugins I have, probably to audio engineers it's so little, but for most of you probably it's scary. And I'm not using every single plugin I have. I have a certain flow. I'm following that and I'm pretty happy with that. And hopefully there are things that I will use, experiments and learn. But in the end, I use what I use and I'm happy with what I do. And it's a process. I just want to tell you that because if you're starting to this mixing journey, probably every day, 100, maybe thousands of people starting this mixing journey, mastering journey or whatever. For mastering, maybe you started to watch this Isotope series, which are very, very good for learning mastering. It gives you day and night differences on those examples, and they're talking about very important stuff. And same goes for mixing. I definitely suggest for you to check Kaminski's mixing videos and Adam Nolly Getgood's mixing videos. That's how I learned the stuff. I followed Nolly everywhere. I asked questions to Nolly and a lot of other people, and I did my best to learn. And this is hopefully my first mix rundown. I will do my best to come up with more of this one. It is a bit of time consuming. I think the video length also shows that. But in the end, I think here and there every month one video for mix rundown could be a little bit beneficial for me, because I will have a second opinion. I mean, it's still me, but checking the same mix after I'm kind of finished 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, it's actually pretty beneficial, because I understand what kind of mistakes I did. I boost, but I cut the same thing, same area, and I can judge myself. And this mix rundown also helped me to understand certain aspects, and I took mental notes. I hope you also took some notes from what I did. Again, not a pro thing, but at least it's a decent mix, I would say. Thank you so much. I didn't talk about automation because in this demo there are not many automations. Before playing it, let me show it to you. There's only rhythm guitar. There are certain areas that I had to push. There's some melodic lines that in the rhythm it's just buried, and some leveling in the drum bass. I didn't even touch probably sorry, let me open the drum bass. I didn't touch any other stuff. Normally I need to work on room mics if there's a huge dynamic difference on the sections, but on this demo there was none. But yeah, it is kind of important. Let me also check leads and clean guitars if there's anything. No. And normally you don't have to have too much automation if you have a lot of tracks. So that's also another benefit of using many tracks and coming up with a certain setting, certain cap, certain miking that is going to serve that section. So it is also something that will evolve in my projects as well. But yeah, that being said, I talked too much. I talked for hours. I'm going to play this for the last time, and thank you so much for checking this video. If you think this is really beneficial, please comment that so I can actually continue and make it a series. And please consider subscribing, turning that notification bell on, checking my live streams, my videos, suggest this channel to a friend, talk about it, say, there's this guy, thinks that he's a good mixer and he's trying to teach to other people. You can say that, you can do that, you can, talk with a friend, and hopefully they could also check what I try to achieve here. I hope to see you on the next one, and I'm hitting the play button, and I'm hoping to see you on the next videos. Ciao.